Wisconsin is doing phenomenal. If you want to be in the top 10 largest pumpkins grown in the state of Wisconsin, you'd have to grow one over 2,000 pounds, and I don't know of any other place where that's so.
Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Wisconsin's Outdoor Explorer podcast. I am your host, Jason, and it is harvest season, and that means it's one of my favorite times of year. There's nothing better than picking apples and going to the pumpkin patches and just seeing all the fruits of labor that went into the growing season. And it all comes down to this now, to get everything out of the fields and off the trees and into your homes so that we can enjoy the tastes of the fall season. Today, we are talking about a special kind of harvest, a special kind of pumpkin. We're talking giant pumpkins today. Giant pumpkins is something that has always fascinated me, how they grow them, what goes into getting them that large, and how large they can really get. And there are a number of festivals throughout Wisconsin that celebrate giant pumpkins and other giant produce. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun today to talk to somebody who could tell us more about this. So joining me today is Margaret Martin. She is with the Wisconsin Giant Pumpkin Growers Association. She is their secretary and newsletter editor. And she talked to me about what goes into growing giant pumpkins and the sizes they can get, and we talked even more about just giant pumpkins. We also talked about some other giant things that are grown in the state and why Wisconsin is such a great place for this. So I hope you enjoy this interview. It was a fascinating topic, and I really enjoyed talking to Margaret, and I hope you really enjoy this podcast. Margaret, thanks for joining us here on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
So my first question is, what is your earliest memory of being outdoors?
My earliest memory of being out, I remember sneaking out the door with my brothers and playing tag. Got in trouble for it too. It was raining. I wasn't supposed to go out.
That's a good one. I like that one. So we're talking a lot about giant pumpkins a little bit today and other giant things, but what classifies a giant pumpkin?
Oh, well, generally a giant pumpkin would be an Atlantic giant pumpkin. Those are the ones that get to be really the biggest of all the fruit that are out there. And they have a soft stem on them. They vary in colors, too. You know, you can have some that are kind of a creamy color all the way to a really bright orange. So, you know, it's kind of flexible. The thing that we're looking for when we're competing with them is that it has a soft stem.
Just the variety, is that's what makes it? It's not necessarily a size thing, it's that variety?
It's the variety, yeah, because you can have a giant, you know, Atlantic giant pumpkin seed and only get a 200-300 pound pumpkin out of it and not get one of the really big ones. And you can still compete. We have all different sizes of fruit that show up at our weigh-offs.
I think it's a little funny that when you say 200 or 300, that's kind of a small pumpkin, and I'm thinking that's already a pretty big pumpkin. So, like, what are the sizes? How big do these things get?
Well, the world record is 2,624.6 pounds. That was grown over in Germany. So, and our state record is 2,283 pounds, and that was grown just last year in 2018. So, yeah, they can get really huge. So you usually don't see anything at a weigh-off less than 200 pounds. Sometimes you'll get one in that's, you know, a little over 100, but that's not too often.
So have you noticed, like, as the years progress and more people are growing and learning things, have you noticed the pumpkins getting larger each year?
Yes, they absolutely are getting larger every year. So we're controlling the pollinations, and in doing so, we want the heaviest fruit that we can get because we want to win the weigh-offs, of course. So we are cross-pollinating, controlling that, you know, the male and the female, and the weights have just steadily gone up. World record after world record after world record I've seen, and I've only been growing about 10 years. Definitely getting bigger.
Give my audience a little bit of an idea, like, what goes into growing a giant pumpkin? Where does it start?
Well, generally it starts like in the fall, the year before. You start prepping your soil, and then all winter you start, you know, scamming and getting your own little game going, you know, what amenities you want to have, what seeds you want to use, and any little tricks you want to do that following year. And then we actually start the seeds somewhere around April, and we'll start them inside, and then we move them out and usually into like a little hut house. And a lot of, you know, we get kind of elaborate with this. We'll put heating cables in the ground to keep them warm and little heaters in there, and, you know, not something that If you're really an intense, competitor, that's what you would do. And we bury all the vines, and we have a whole regiment of things that we go through. And the more you do, the bigger the fruit you'll get. And if you do very little, you could come off with a 300-400 pound pumpkin fairly easily with little or no work. The main thing that you really want to do is make sure that your rodents aren't getting your pumpkins and the bugs aren't killing them, and that you keep them watered.
I've seen like specials and news stories about this, and people trade seeds. And is that all true, that people do that you have certain seeds that you select that you think are going to give you the largest pumpkins?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of your winter scamming. You're looking through we've got what are online. You can go to the Pumpkin Fanatic. It's a website, and on there it will tell you the lineage of your seeds. So if I wanted to look up a particular seed, the top 10 are right there. I can click on it, and it'll tell me what seed was crossed with what to get that fruit. And we're doing that all of the time as we're studying these genetics, and we're putting them together, trying to figure out which ones are going to produce the next world record. That's what everybody's going for, is that next world record. So, and we do swap seeds, and we've got a club, and we swap seeds in the club, and we have auctions, and you can buy them at auctions, and that's where you're going to get your best seeds, is at the club auctions, and by swapping with other growers. If you're interested in growing giant pumpkins, one of the best things you can do for yourself is to join a club, because then you start meeting other growers. They tell you different tips. We have new grower seminars and things like that, and we're always willing to share what we know and share seeds. I don't know too many growers that, if you asked them, wouldn't give you a seed. I'm
imagining everybody swapping seeds and talking with each other, and you're kind of doing it, but yet you still don't know what really the outcome is, do you?
No, not until you get to the weigh-off. And anything can happen. We have a method of measuring the pumpkins, and it's called the OTT, and we'll measure the circumference, and then we'll measure front to back and side to side, and we'll get these three numbers, and we'll add them together. And then we'll look on our chart, and it'll give us an estimated weight. Well, when you get to the scale, you can go 10% heavy, and I've seen it, or even light. You can go 5 or 10% light. I've already seen them go 20% heavy. I'll tell you, when that happens, the whole crowd just, it's silent. It's like, oh, what just happened, So you just don't know. So, and then along the way, anything could happen where your fruit, goes down. They can be growing too fast and split, or a rodent can get after them. You just don't know.
How was Wisconsin rate as far as giant pumpkin growing?
Wisconsin is doing phenomenal. If you want to be in the top 10 largest pumpkins grown in the state of Wisconsin, you'd have to grow one over 2,000 pounds. And I don't know of any other place where that's so. We have a really good club, and we share information, and we have seminars every spring where we're constantly talking about how to grow them. We have patch tours that we go on where we look at other people's patches and see what they're doing. And we'll interview the, growers at these patch tours. So we're doing really phenomenal in Wisconsin. It's definitely a place you want to grow pumpkins.
Well, that's great. So besides joining our organization, what is, like, say I want to start doing this, what would be like the first thing I would have to do?
The first thing you'll probably want to do is do some research and just find out about what it takes to grow a giant pumpkin. There's lots of good books out there. Wisconsin Giant Pumpkin Growers has some good information for beginners. I know there's something on that website, and bigpumpkins.com also can provide you with lots of good information. That's where I think it would be a good place to start.
When I think of pumpkins, I think, the pumpkin patch and walking through and seeing all these pumpkins. How many giant pumpkins do you usually get out of like your crop every year?
Well, you get one pumpkin per plant. So, and they're huge plants. They'll be anywhere from 600 to 1,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they're quite large. So if you're going to grow it in your backyard, it'll probably take up most of your backyard. We usually figure that there's going to be a 50% loss ratio, that if we plant 6 plants, we'll end up with 3 of them that actually make it to the scale for competition, if you're really pushing them,
That's a lot of space that they take up, but, they need the room, I suppose, right?
Yeah, everything about these is giant. The seeds are pretty good sized, and the plant is huge, and then you get this big plant. The bigger your plant, it seems like the bigger fruit you're going to get. And when you're growing these plants, you have to bury all the vines, and at each leaf, a taproot goes down. So you got this intricate root system going on beneath the plant. So, and that's what feeds this monster.
Wow, that's just it's so interesting to hear all that, because the time that you must spend all spring and summer to get the giant pumpkin that you want.
Yes, it does take quite a bit of time, but it's something that we're enjoying doing. My husband and I grow together, and so we're both out there a lot of times together talking about things and burying vines together. We kind of got a method of how we're going to do it. You know, one of them will clean them up because we, clean up the vines, and we put down micronutrients and different beneficial microbes, and then we bury them. And we got a whole system worked out where the two of us work in unison together to get this done. And yeah, we're out there just about every day.
What better time to be outside, right? During spring and summer and fall of Wisconsin. There's just no better time than that. So
that's true. Yeah.
You get the pumpkin, it's done growing. Now, what do you do with it? You take it to contests? Does it just go to one, or can you take it to multiple? How does that all work?
Each pumpkin can go to one contest. You can't have any what we call as touring pumpkins. So if you get a huge pumpkin and you think, well, I'm going to just smoke everybody and take that same pumpkin to 6 weigh-offs, nope, you're going to get caught. We're going to tell you, no. One pumpkin for each weigh-off. So that keeps it more fun for all the growers, too, so that everybody has a chance to win. So if your buddy's got his big one he's taken to one weigh-off, then you can take your big one to a different one, so each one of you can win.
Little strategy involved there is what you're saying.
Well, we're lucky in Wisconsin because we do have so many weigh-offs. Some of the states, only have one or two weigh-offs, and so they don't have that opportunity. It's another part of the game is the strategy of which weigh-off you're going to take to what, because nobody really tells you how much their fruit is, and we got what we call sandbaggers out there, and they're not telling you the truth.
So let's talk about these weigh-offs a little bit, because they're usually at festivals that people can come see, right?
Yes, they are. And as a matter of fact, in the state of Wisconsin, we have 6 of them. One of them we've already had. No, it's last weekend. That was in Kenosha. We've got one coming up this weekend. It's the Cedarburg Wine and Harvest Festival. And these are all family fun events, where they've got music and they've got games, things like that. Of course, the weigh-offs then. And then there's one at the River Prairie Pumpkin Festival in Alatoona. And then we've got the Nakusa Giant Pumpkin Fest, and that's in Nakusa. Then Green Bay Fall Festival on October 12th. And then the Michigan Pumpkin Festival is our last one. And each one offers different things for the families to do. And you can look up online and, get more information on exactly what goes on at each one. But usually there'll be vendors there selling their wares, food, bands. It's usually a good time.
I know the Nakusa one is closer to where I live. I know they do this huge pumpkin drop at the end of the day where they take some of these pumpkins and just raise them up in a crane and drop them, and people are just amazed at when they hit the ground and stuff.
Yeah, Nakusa's a good one, too, for bringing your kids to, because they'll have the pumpkin roll where the kids can, have their races with the pumpkins, and they've got lots of stuff for families, with the kids. You can do your shopping, go to your car show, and check out the pumpkins while you're there. It's a lot going on. That's a good festival.
What do you do after the weigh-ins with these things? I mean, do you make 10,000 pies with them? What do you do with all these pumpkins? People
don't want to eat them because we've used a lot of pesticides that it's probably not safe to eat. Not for human consumption, A lot of times we'll cut them open and we'll harvest the seeds because we got our big seed exchanges going on in the winter. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people do sell them and they'll use them for advertising and things like that. And you'll have fundraisers where it'll be guess the weight of the pumpkin. Some stores will put them on display out in front. I know we've had some on display out in front of Lambeau Field in Green Bay. They had the children's event there, or the Spooktacular event that they have every October. And a few years back, I don't think we have the last few years, but we had some on display there for photo ops with the kids. People love the photo ops with them. And some people even cut them open and, use them as boats for regattas. Those are fun, too.
That gives you an idea of how big they can get when somebody can actually sit inside them and float down the water.
And the funny thing about that is the ones that they actually use for the regattas that are the best ones are only about 800 pounds. And when you think they can get to be 2,600 pounds, somebody's sitting in one that's considered small to a grower. Not even 1,000 pounds, what's that?
I just think it's funny when you say only 800. I keep thinking, man, that's just huge, an 800-pound pumpkin. But I always get a kick out of that a little bit when you say it like that. But it doesn't stop with pumpkins, does it?
No, it doesn't. We compete with lots of other things too. We've got the giant squash, and those can get to be as big as the pumpkins. The world record, 2,118 pounds. A guy, Joe Jutras, out in Rhode Island grew that. And it's basically the same thing as the pumpkin, only it's green. And then they've got the long gourds, and a lot of people mistake those for green beans because those things, they're 150 inches long, is the world record.
Gosh.
Yeah, they're huge. It's great to see somebody on stilts holding one of those things up, and it's still taller than them. That's kind of a riot to see that. And then we got the giant watermelons, world records, 350 pounds, world record for watermelon. The tomatoes, 9.44 pound tomato. I mean, it's as big as your head. Then we got a 211-pound field pumpkin, and now the latest thing has been the bushel gourds. That just started last year, and that's a 384-pound bushel gourd. Somebody crossed one of those things with a long gourd, and they're coming up. And this year, people are growing these things as bushel gourd, long gourd cross, and man, that's just the weirdest looking thing.
Kind of whatever you can imagine right now. It sounds like that you can try to be giant. You go for it, don't you?
It is, and those are just the ones that we compete in. There are people who are growing like the giant cabbage and the giant carrots just for fun, and we share that on Facebook, hey, look what I grew, So,
what is your largest pumpkin that you've grown?
The largest pumpkin that I've grown is 2,017 pounds. So, yeah, 1-ton pumpkin.
That's amazing. Amazing.
Sad thing is it's not even in the top 10 in the state anymore. It was at the time. It was, but not anymore.
And that's got to drive you a little bit too, right? You get one in the top 10 and it falls out, and it just got to drive you to work a little harder to get back in there, doesn't it?
It does. At one time we had several state records, and then, we were getting to a point where our yard wasn't big enough to grow all the things that we wanted to grow. So we had a patch at home, and we had one at a remote location, and we were trying to do this double patch thing. And so we had to kind of figure out, it was taking so much time. We ended up merging into one patch, but we're not quite ready to go full on with all of the Master Gardener stuff because our soil isn't amended yet. So, but eventually we're going to get back into that. And we did quite well with that. We had the Master Gardener. We've won that 3 times. That's international competition. And what that is you grow in all these different categories, and they take the person who did overall best in like 5 of the 6 categories or 5 of the 7 categories. And that person wins, Master Gardener. And we won that 3 times. So we're like, we got to do that again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because we're not in the top 10 on anything.
Got to reclaim that crown, right?
That's right. We got to go for it again.
Again, it's a fascinating world that you're in, and I'm glad you shared it with me. Where can people go to learn more?
The best place to go would be like to Wisconsin Giant Pumpkin Growers. Is an awesome site. Our president of that, John Barlow, wrote a really nice beginners article. So you can click on that and you can get all of the beginners information. We have our statistics on there where you can find out what the world records are, state records, and that type of thing. And then there are links on there that will take you to other websites like bigpumpkins.com. That has a lot of information on giant pumpkins. And there's a whole community that shares. We got boards where we ask questions and, share information on there. And not just on the pumpkins, on all of the fruit. And there you can find, if you look on her, you'll find the stats on what's going on with the weigh-offs and where they're located. And there's lots of links from there all over the country and even all over the world on where you can hook up with other growers and get more information.
I'll put links to all that in my show notes so people can find it. But Margaret, I want to thank you for joining me on the podcast, and good luck this year with the weigh-ins.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank Margaret again from the Wisconsin Giant Pumpkin Growers Association for joining me on this week's podcast. This is just such a fascinating topic to me. I just find it so interesting. I just found it interesting when she would say a small pumpkin is only like 800 pounds. And to me, it's like, I can't even fathom that sometimes. So I hope you really enjoyed it. She did such a great job explaining what the giant pumpkins are all about and what other giant things are grown here in the state. And I'll share the links that she talked about if you're interested in starting to grow your first giant pumpkin as you head out to be one of Wisconsin's outdoor explorers. Thanks again for joining me. I'm your host, Jason, and I will talk to you again next week. Thanks for listening to the Wisconsin's Outdoor Explorer podcast. For more great information about being an outdoor explorer, visit our website at wisconsinsoutdoorexplorer.com. Be sure to check out the blog page and follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.